Now, we know a lot of MPs watch this programme, so come closer, MPs. I've got something important to tell you. Closer, closer. That's close enough. Now listen, if some pretty PR lady comes to your office offering you money beyond your wildest dreams, she's from the Sunday Times. They've been doing it for years, and you keep falling for it, which suggests that you're not just greedy, but stupid. And I'm not sure what's worse than an elected representative. Now, I know scores of you are heading for the obscurity so many of you richly deserve. Bye-bye, Mr. Butterfill your boots. Sorry about the peerage. Ha ha. But will the new lot be any better? Somebody who's hoping to breathe new life into Parliament is broadcaster Esther Rantzen, who's running as a self-styled anti-sleaze candidate. This is her take of the week.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say.
Thank you. You may think, since I've spent a lifetime in television, that I'd be used to intrigue and jealousy and backbiting. But I can tell you, what I've learnt in my short time in politics makes television look like a picnic. I think I need a teeny bit more. The thing about the most recent scandal is it's shocking, but sadly it's not surprising. There was Stephen Byers, ex-minister, describing himself as a taxi for hire. Well, it just seems that these politicians are living in a world of their own, and they've forgotten us, the voters, entirely.
But I know I'm gonna change that tune when I'm back on top in June. I said that's life.
This has become their whole world. It's almost like a different planet. In here, they're like warring tribes, singing the same mantra, shouting the same war chants. Even if someone points out that the rules are all wrong and they run the risk of looking corrupt and tainted, tribal loyalty takes over. And if somebody independent had been there, maybe that would have made all the difference.
And if I didn't think it was worth one single try, I'd jump right on a big bird and then I'd fly.
At least now there is an election on the horizon, and that means a glimmer of hope, because after all there's going to be hundreds of new MPs. They're going to bring in tough new rules. So perhaps at last the public is going to get the standard of behaviour, the kind of culture we want and we deserve. That is, of course, if the public trusts them enough to vote for them in the first place.
That's life. That's life. That's life.
That was Esther Rantzen in our studio, and she's now in our studio again. Welcome to This Week.
Thank you.
Are you really the answer to our politics?
Well, no, of course I'm not the answer. I may be a minor form of protest. The answer is that they've got actually to change the system. I mean, for one thing, we do have to have a way of recalling MPs if they're not doing a good job. I mean, one of the ones that we didn't mention in that piece was Margaret Moran, who actually has said that she's too ill to do any work in her constituency or in Westminster, but told that pseudo-lobbyist that she was available for work now.
Yeah, we saw that on the Channel 4 documentary. But what difference could you make? I mean, we elected, one constituency elected Martin Bell.
Yes.
Because of all the sleaze then. Doesn't seem to have made much difference.
One swallow doesn't make a summer. You do have to change the system. But I believe that if the public were to vote for a dozen independent MPs who came into Parliament with different skills, different life experience, and could provide a non-tribal voice. I mean, what I've been so astonished by meeting professional politicians is that the rosette on your shoulder means that you know exactly who your friends are and who your enemies are. I mean, you two are snuggling nicely together, but I imagine...
It's an act.
Is it?
It's an act.
Well, shame, really.
Because I've made the sofa smaller every week.
I could see that.
Would it work? Would 12 independent men and women, good and true, would it make a difference?
I'm all for a broader range of people becoming members of Parliament. I think the Tories have done well, actually, to get more black candidates and more women candidates. I think that's a good thing. And But there are independents and independents, Esther.
Oh, sure.
And there's a guy called Richard Taylor. He's not as high profile as you, but he's a genuine independent. He's genuinely local. He's genuinely representing people, and he brings genuine skills.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a role for independents, but celebrities parachuted in from outside, that isn't going to change
See,
anything.
you're sitting
very
next to a
much.
celebrity.
I know, but first of all, he was a politician. Then he became a Z-list celebrity.
Oh, I
My
see.
argument is you shouldn't be a Z-list celebrity first and then become a
Why
politician.
not? I mean, suppose you're
Because
an...
it's the wrong way round.
But I'm a
Esther.
journalist, you see, like this man. I'm an investigative journalist. I did a lot of consumerism, and now I work in child protection. I have done so for 23 years. Now, that's a certain amount of
But
expertise.
You're parachuted in. You're not local.
Oh, hold
I
on.
respect.
She's not being... It's not like what political parties do, which is they do parachute people in. She's
And that's
just
wrong.
chosen
That's
to go
wrong.
to a certain
I
place.
think there should be a broader range of candidates. I've always believed this. And I believe that we should have more local candidates because that brings more breadth. Not all, but some.
Michael, what we saw this week with the 3 Labour cabinet ministers and the Tory MP, Mr Butterfield, that I mentioned, does this damage all politicians, all parties, or does it particularly damage, at the moment, Labour?
Well, the Labour ones were more prominent, and I think there was probably a lingering feeling amongst the public that sleaze was something associated with the Conservative Party. And I guess this truly evens up the account so that it's unlikely that people will go into the election thinking that the Tories are more sleazy than Labour. So to that extent, I think it is particularly bad for Labour. But it doesn't mean that people think Labour is sleazy and the Conservatives are not. No, it just kind of evens up the balance.
Is it bad for Labour?
It damages everybody. I mean,
We know that, but is it particularly bad for Labour because it was 3 Labour
particularly
ministers
bad
and you're
for
the
the
governing
government
party?
because it's the government party you want to buy up.
Is it fair that all politicians in this should suffer? That we now have a kind of plague on all your houses attitude?
And that's dangerous. If it means that people are not going to vote, that's dangerous. If it means that people completely lose trust in democracy, that's dangerous. So I'm hoping, against hope, that even though we have a protest vote this election, which I'm sure we will, don't you think, that people will be swept away, people who otherwise have contributed. You see, that's the tragedy. We aren't talking about total villains. We're talking about people that just went along with a very sleazy culture.
And we are talking about a minority of MPs, Esther.
Well, are we? Because
Quite a
that's-
big minority, though,
that
isn't it?
It
Yes,
is.
but I mean, I can name you people right next to you who are exemplary MPs, who don't have a second home, who are not lobby fodder, and who are very, very local.
I mean, in a way,
I
you have to
totally-
kind of fan the plague in all your houses feeling, don't you? To get the protest vote.
Yes, well, I'm afraid that, although I agree with
Think that's
you...
not true?
I agree with you that if an MP has been a brilliant constituency MP, and I know exactly who you mean, then his reputation remains high.
Good, so it's wrong to smear all MPs, isn't it?
The public now believes that all MPs are
Yeah,
tainted.
That's true, but it's regrettable.
and
But
the-
you, knowing better,
Yeah.
shouldn't smear all MPs.
No, because I think the system is tainted. You went along with, collectively,
Esther, I
went
have
along
one
with...
house.
Hold on. Went along with redactions, with trying to
Esther.
spend a fortune on lawyers
No
to
one
keep
asked
things
me.
quiet. Well, then you should have spoken
Don't
out.
smear all MPs. It doesn't help the democratic
No,
process.
the problem, Diane, is that
Yeah.
every time we say that, and
Yeah.
what you say is true,
Yeah.
every time you say that, another scandal involving more MPs comes out.
Curiously, if you ask because the public is infected by this thing. We're all rubbish, we're all scoundrels. But if you ask people about their own MP, they often have a more balanced view.
course.
I worry about undermining the system as a whole.
Do you have anything useful to add here, Michael, or are you just going to sit there?
I wondered if I'd be brought in. I think what was really dismaying about the scandal this week was that it followed everything else, and it's only just happened. You know, these people have been filmed quite recently. So here, for example, were a couple of people who were in the cabinet until a couple of months ago. They were supposedly spearheading, the government's attack against sleaze. They were the people who were masterminding the new regulations and so on. And here they are getting caught out in this way. So I think people will have reached the conclusion that even if it isn't all MPs, that collectively the institution hasn't learned.
No.
And I don't think that the tribalness that matters is the one you referred to. It isn't red and blue rosettes. By the way, it's much easier to have friends on the other side of the house than it is to have friends on your own side of the house. I thought that's the point you were going to make.
Yeah.
What matters, the tribalism that matters, is the tribalism of the institution.
Agreed.
And there are many institutions, I think banks are probably another example, where when you enter the institution, you kind of leave your own morality at the front door.
Absolutely.
And what has not been answered yet, and I think will be very interesting to see, is whether a new generation of MP, who at the moment are candidates and are very self-satisfied, very complacent, and very sure that they're not going to fall into the same trap, whether they don't find, as they become the next generation of MP, that they too leave their morality hanging at the front door.
Well, I mean, the whiter than white phrase now, I mean, everybody thought 97 was going to be a watershed. Well, at least 90% of people did. That what had become a very sleazy Conservative era would be changed and that this would be different. And it's turned out, in a different way, were just as bad, if not worse.
Yes, absolutely. And the mantra became, in the public, they still don't get it. Because as each new revelation followed another revelation, all you saw was MPs trying to cover it. I remember sitting in a studio listening to Stuart Bell defending the Speaker.
Please don't compare me to Stuart Bell. Just a word on...